Welcome back. Wing It Podcast, goosedigital.com. Who do we have?
Chris O'Neill.
Robin Kroll.
Jen Pugsley.
All right, Michael Turksani. So episode 22, 23? 22. So we haven't been churning them out the way we used to, Chris.
Been busy.
We've been busy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we moved and, took us a little while to get going. So
Is this our first podcast from the new podcast?
no, it's our third.
Third.
Yeah, our new pod. We made some adjustments to the cameras and things like that, so we look good. Yeah,
The room
Robin,
looks
I
the
don't know where
same.
you've been.
I don't know where I've been either.
Robin's been busy too.
Yeah, Robin's been busy.
Elsewhere.
So this is an insurance one, a topic that
Yes.
is near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah.
Because we have a special guest.
Yeah, we have Jennifer Pugsley, our insurance subject matter expert, who's been on multiple podcasts at this point. Chris, not just Wing It.
She has. She's
Right.
She's
Yeah.
making her rounds.
She's a podcast pro.
insurance podcast.
Insurance
She was on.
podcast was
Yeah.
one,
It was a good one.
Thanks.
and there's others, so I can't remember them, but I know there's at least a dozen others that Jen's been on.
Yeah. There's only
She's
so
been
many
busy,
topics.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only so many topics, but it is important because we're heavy in the insurance industry with our go-to-market. I'll let you guys talk a little bit about what we're doing there, and we wanted to talk about what we're seeing in terms of tactics, kind of once we come out of our initial strategy sessions, and a lot of focus that's been on personal lines. And now we're talking about commercial lines more and more and more because the brokers that we engage tend to have diverse businesses. So we thought, well, there isn't a lot of content right now. We're starting to see more of it that's targeted at the commercial lines. So why don't we start off with a little bit of an overview, and maybe Robin, Jen, Chris, on the what was Goose Digital doing in the insurance space to bring everybody kind of up to speed, and how has that been progressing over the last 8-9 months?
Well, we've been doing a lot. I think of what we've been doing specifically with brokers. We've been talking to a lot of brokers across Canada. We're seeing a huge shift in the insurance industry, and I know everybody says that, but the shift that we're talking about is from a digital transformation perspective. Talking to brokers who see that they need to change the way they're doing business if they want to continue to be in business for the next couple of years. And they understand that they need to find a different way to find new audiences, continue to engage with their existing audiences. In order to do all this at scale, they need a strategy, and they need technology to help reinforce that. And that's the conversation, the first level of conversation that we're having with them.
Yep.
I think the important thing about how a broker is sort of changing is, again, because of the change that's happened in their customer and where their customer can be found. So in years gone by, it was all based on referral, and that certainly still continues. But being able to reach that ready-to-buy customer is no longer done by picking up the phone, making a phone call, sending letters out, etc. And I think that the brokers generally are discovering that in order to continue on that road is not something that's very effective. In closing rates are certainly down. Like getting people on the phone is sort of like got half the efficiencies that it had in the past, and so now we have to meet our customers where they are, which of course is looking for providers online. And that is where sort of we get started on our approach, which is reach out. We talk about eating our own dog food. What we do out to our marketplace, which is among other verticals, is the insurance broker out there, is to reach them via either email, email connection. We use direct mail. We use all those means, and that's the methods that we are recommending to our customers, is to get out there and like across the board, full communication, full press across the board.
Yeah, and I think that there's still this place for the relationship and the nurturing is more needed now than it ever was before as well. So I think it is still very much a relationship business, especially on the retention front, right? But I think that marrying those two together is really important. It's like it wasn't being done before, right? You're just relying heavily on the relationship and referral aspect of it.
I don't think the relationship will ever go out of insurance.
No,
right?
and not
And
like our
it's,
business.
Exactly.
Right?
So it's a way of saying, there's different formats to have a relationship, but what can we use where we can use technology to support all those other things that surround the relationship and allow for it to be personalized and nurtured.
What's happening in the insurance market too is that there's a lot of different pieces of technology that are being developed that are out there in the marketplace, and we notice that that there's a tendency to try some different things, which I think is great. We love it when a client has gone out and they've tried either a customer marketing tool or they've tried some kind of an online attempt, maybe a campaign
Or a coding engine, or tools that kind of solve that piece.
Exactly. And so when you got those pieces and they've explored those things, there's a little bit more reception to something that's more all-encompassing. So when we go out there and more strategic. When we go out there and say, listen, so what are the pieces that you're using so far? How are you engaging your customers and your new prospects right now? We talk about how that, how effective that is. We start to establish some, benchmarks in terms of how well that is working. And then we can start to talk about what other things can be added in. Simply in ways that are not
we've developed, it's a good point. We see obviously a focus on growth, a focus on retention. How do you grow? I mean, you've got to retain business and add business in order to hit your growth objectives. Some brokers are churning at whatever rate, and their objective is in order to just maintain their size, they have to write a fair bit of new business. So growth is always kind of those two things in our mind. And then if you've tried a bunch of what we would refer to as a digital beginner, where you've tried a number of things, they're usually more receptive to us coming in and helping them get to that strategic approach, which means you have a strategic plan and a budget assigned to putting all of these pieces together and then helping move down that path of basically becoming much more digitally led and organized than you probably have been in the past. So we've made that very much a turnkey framework. And part of that framework, why we're here today, for most of the broker clients that we have in the space, is a combination of campaigns and to the front end of their business as well as to their clients that start to go into every single product line that they have. So there's been a lot of emphasis on kind of that quote and bind of a personal lines client or a really sort of simplistic sort of policy. And what we're finding is that, a broker will have many different products in their company. And oftentimes the biggest value that we can add from a digital perspective is in those other areas where we're able to take some more complex products and help them communicate digitally and move campaigns to bring more traffic and more marketing qualified leads to the table. So that kind of leads to this conversation of the commercial lines that we wanted to cover today. So Robin, I'll turn it over to you and Jen to sort of outline, what do we do from a commercial lines perspective? Kind of what are some of the advantages when you're in this sort of B2B world than you are kind of pure B2C from a digital perspective, and the advances we can make there, and then get into some of the details.
Well, it's interesting because if you think, if you said from the personal lines perspective, people would understand the different products and personas if you're an individual versus you're a couple or a family. But somehow there isn't that same understanding from the B2B perspective, right? So understanding that, different businesses, whether they're in different verticals or different sizes, they want to hear about insurance that fits their need. And, so from a growth strategy for a broker saying, how is it that we go ahead and identify those potential customers, they need to have that sort of personalized perspective in mind. So understanding that a manufacturer or a small technology business, not only do they have different needs, but they're going to resonate with a campaign, a message that speaks to their specific industry.
Well, and thought leadership. Too,
Exactly.
right? There's a real
Expertise.
need for thought leadership in the commercial world that we don't see enough today, right? So if you are a manufacturing company and you have risk management, maybe in-house or that's something that you provide as a broker, there's a whole world of thought leadership that's not kind of being produced today, and it is well received by the mid-market to large.
Absolutely.
Even the smaller guys, even that tech consultant role or that tech company.
I would say
right?
even more so
Yeah.
the smaller guys, right? Because, and this is some of the stuff we're reading, the smaller businesses, they don't have the time to be able to sift through all this. They need a partner. So there's the opportunity for a broker to be a partner, to come in and to really explain or what can insurance help them with, what do they need. And I'm thinking even cyber. So everywhere any insurance publication you read, you're going to see something about cyber. But cyber risk for oil and gas, for an advertising company, for a medical clinic, these are all business verticals that need to have cyber protection, but different levels of cyber protection.
And a different message on how, I think what you're saying is that a different message on how the broker, an opportunity for the broker to communicate to that customer uniquely. If you're a tech company, you probably want to align that ad message or that thought leadership content that's more squarely at their challenges and their way of doing business than a medical professional.
And there's a lot of opportunity around keywords, right? So what we see is, these businesses, whether you're a small business and let's just say you're a tech company, you're not searching small business insurance. You're being picked up on keywords like insurance for my tech company or cyber insurance that might be a bit of a stretch, but so I think there's a lot of opportunity in picking up those keywords. Your retail, let's say you're your first business and you're going to open up that little boutique, you're searching retail insurance. So I see a lot of brokers in Canada today, and it's a huge miss because they're bidding on small business, and that's fine, but getting really, where we help is getting really targeted down to that campaign. So it's hyper-focused.
I think one of the ways that we help is starting from the high level, like starting from the strategy, right? So, talking to brokers, understanding what expertise do they already have in-house. So if it is, it's a cyber industry, and then, understanding what the thought leadership, what they understand about the existing customers, about the market, talking about pain points, which then leads to what are the keywords, how are we going to find those customers, and how are we going to communicate that thought leadership and expertise to them. So it's a whole process.
And through what channels? LinkedIn, a huge one. Big missed opportunity on LinkedIn, right?
It's true. And then the other part of it that is oftentimes sort of not addressed well enough is the personalized messaging that a prospective customer needs to feel when they arrive at the site. So we have a lot of conversations with customers that have the PI business as well as a commercial, and there's a reluctance to kind of be really precise about what kind of journeys the customer comes on when they arrive at the site. So if you and again, there's a lot of analytics around bounce rates and so forth, but if you see that your Google ads or your LinkedIn ads are bringing people to your site, but then they're bouncing off, got to take a look at what kind of messages you're giving out to those commercial.
You've got a digital team that's driving ads to a website that's telling one story. So the ad might be very, more targeted or personalized, if you will, to an industry type of business, and then you send them to a very generic page on a site. So for sure, those are the really good points. And I think it's, unfortunately, this isn't rocket science. This is just a lot of work. So if you've got a dozen, if you've got a dozen industries that are in your top 10 in a commercial brokerage, and then you've got many different products that you can sell into those, I mean, you could be looking at 20 to 30 campaigns that could really, and then you think of the customer level marketing as well. That's like, insurance is one of those things that is not a one size fits all, and it becomes very, maybe complex is the wrong word, just a lot of work.
Labor heavy.
Labor heavy, right? So what Goose Digital brings is the way to, kind of flip a switch and get a lot of that stuff moving based on past experiences. But, you do want to have, like we use the cyber example, going to a couple of different industries. So right there, you could have 3 or 4 different ads running on LinkedIn and a couple of different ads running on Google. Plus you've got remarketing to bring those customers back. And these are terms that maybe a broker principal won't be as familiar with, but I think a lot of times we're seeing people that have tried some things. To the extent that they've tried some things, they may not be aware that it can actually work for them, because they've kind of passed it off to their digital leader to go spend the first $5,000 a month. Like, the account that we're going in tomorrow that spends maybe even more than that. They might be spending close to $20,000 a month on paid media that's getting them all but nowhere. And the good news is that they know that it can work for them. They just know they're not kind of doing the right things today. But I think many brokers are out there saying, well, this doesn't work, especially commercial. They'll say, well, isn't that just a relationship game?
Or people don't search on commercial. And this is what I love. This is what gets me super excited about commercial, is that when it gets really good, is that then you align those targets with your pipeline inside the brokerage with those producers, right? So then you can get, Chris, you can probably speak to this, right? It's almost like an account-based marketing play. And then you're really getting into a system where it's like, okay, we're maybe not by vertical, this is our cyber guy, this is our cyber expert, but then you can really start to connect the dots and to where these campaigns are going, to when they're connected to your producer, how that gets nurtured until they're ready to buy. Then you loop in your year renewal, right? Whether it's new business or retention. So it's got a pretty good system.
I think for the most part, most insurance companies that have been around for a while, they recognize that when they get their commercial salesperson on the line with someone, that's what they need to have happen. Yeah. And so as far as the thought leadership goes, you need to be peppering that in, yes, on your ads, but yes, as well, when you get to the website, that prospective customer needs to see that right there, because if they don't, they're bounced.
Rob, why don't you talk a little bit about, as part of this kind of now, dovetailing on the aligning with the pipeline, we've had a client that is probably about 6 months in, maybe 5 months, 6 months in, and never saw a lot of value running any kind of campaigns, but had been around for probably close to 50 years plus, around 50 years, right, as a company. And it certainly tried some things, and I think you launched off with commercial, and you're seeing some very good results, right?
We did, and I think it comes back to the strategy, and I'm thinking a lot of what we're talking about is there's a process in place, and I think that's why this has been successful. That starting off with a strategy, with defining audiences, and putting together a plan of saying, this is the audience that we want to reach out to. This is our level of expertise. This is the campaign. These are our keywords. These are the channels we're going to use. And going through that entire process and realizing, it actually does work, because we're really focused on a step-by-step and isolating, a particular vertical, not going after, 20 different personas or products, and being able to see that as you're going through that, you're starting to get leads. You're getting qualified leads. Your sales team are getting these people on the phone, or you're communicating with them by email, and they're able to convert them. And seeing that your investment is starting to result in returns, and that's exactly that's what's happening with this company.
So we had targeting personas products. We covered a lot of that stuff. I think maybe one thing we didn't talk enough about is that the digital platforms, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, even Instagram, I'd sort of lump into Facebook. they do offer very strong targeting as it relates to commercial lines, right? So you can, without knowing anything about a customer base, you can go in there and set up geographic targeting right down to the vertical if you want to go after those manufacturers and get really, really tight. You can also take, which we do a lot, a list of customers. So we'll take a list of customers, maybe you've got 1,000 customers or more, and you can build lookalike audiences within those networks to take, this is our 500 customers in our 500 trucking companies, and it'll go help you find thousands, tens of thousands more type of thing. So there's unlike, I think what we said before, unlike your B2C options, which tend to be more difficult to get that granular, obviously, down to the person level, this gives us a lot of really unique targeting capabilities on the campaigns to then bring people through that pipeline that you suggested and warm them up and measure everything to do with product and market. We also had first-time buyers. Is there anything that you guys wanted to bring up related to the first-time buyers?
Yeah, I think we want to. There's lots. We have some clients who one of their key targets is new businesses, and then growing those businesses, offering more products as those businesses grow, right? So whether they're young tech companies or young retail, it's been a good focus, right? And that, I think those are the customers that need the most education. Well, right.
Yeah, no, I think that I would agree with you on that, because if you are starting off in business, you think of, how many things that you need to focus on just to get your business up and running, and insurance probably is not at the top of that list. So somewhere in there that you need to have insurance. You don't really know what. It's just something else that you want to be able to cover off. So you need to be able to find out what type of insurance, what broker you should be working for, get that conversation started, get your policy in place so you can focus on growing your business.
Canada is so focused on entrepreneurs, right? And they have been for so long that I think that it's a great vertical, and I think we've certainly seen success. And when we do those personas, or when you do those personas, a lot of stuff comes out in that, and it's been really interesting. Right?
So what would you say, Chris, maybe as you wrap up here, to a commercial broker that's maybe been in this now for, doing all those traditional things over many, many years, building relationships, knocking on doors, potentially renewing, that thinks that digital doesn't play or can't play a role in either supporting a growth end of the spectrum or retaining business?
Yeah, I think I'd start by asking, what kind of conversion that they're seeing. In other words, how many conversations are they having that are really not in their sweet spot? So we have a lot of conversations that start that way. In other words, they're flat. They're like on an annual basis. They're either not growing, they're not shrinking. They're just sort of staying the same. And they're not seeing sort of additional, one of the most important things I think that we're able to drive is that marketing qualified lead. So get into really good conversations. How do you feel about the conversations that you're having with the prospects that you are getting through the door? And then sort of start there and look at driving that into a more specific sort of area where they really feel comfortable and competent to sort of take a customer through.
Now, do you think, I know we talked about new businesses, and I think we talked maybe about an example, one of the ones that we brought up might have been small business, but I think one of the key messages around the larger business or medium-sized companies, which would be, I think, more along the lines of how Goose Digital would, like our own go-to-market for insurance, and how we would market to hundreds and hundreds of brokers that fit a certain range of, they got to be big, they have to be big enough, but not too big. What do you say to, the individual that's like, well, no, a $50 million manufacturer, they're not going online to search for insurance. Okay, well, maybe,
not.
they might be.
They might be.
everybody goes online to search for something,
Right.
right?
But they're
So it
reading
could
thought
be-
leadership.
They're reading thought
Exactly.
leadership.
Right.
Yeah.
They're likely on LinkedIn.
Exactly.
They're likely on these social networks.
They also have a division of at these businesses, whether you're a compliance officer or you're a VP that deals with just the insurance, if you're a $50 million manufacturer, right? So there is
There's roles.
there's a total job there around the insurance portion that needs thought leadership, that needs that
But I think it
right?
forces the challenge is that it forces you to really think about, which is what the work that you're doing, Robin, on the front end with Jen. It forces them to think about, well, why would somebody pick us? You know, like if we're going into $100 million manufacturing environment or maybe a trucking company, like what value are we bringing them? So I think that's where, you know, other than, you know, shaking a hand on a golf course and saying, I'll do business with you, they are on LinkedIn, they are on these social networks, they are available to digitally knock on their door. What do you want to say to them? What are you going to say to them? Right. And I think really that becomes the challenge that many of these people, well, I know what I would say to them if I was having a coffee or a beer with them.
Exactly.
Well, okay, well, what is that?
Yeah.
And pulling that out of them and saying, well, great, let's take that phenomenal thing, the fact that you've got 20 deep years of dealing with all kinds of claims and scenarios in that vertical market, let's get that into an ad. Let's put that in front of another 200 of those types of clients, and let's see what comes through that.
And I think that's a great example of looking at digital as a way to communicate something that you would want to do face to face, right? So it's a channel to transmit that message to a wider audience, but to understand, well, if you're talking to somebody, you're going to have a very directed conversation. You're going to talk about the value you can bring to them, and just think about using digital as a way to get that conversation out there.
Yeah. All right.
Good.
Well, I think we're good. I think that's been a good session. So we'll pump out a couple more while Jen's here. But thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Fun.
Commercial lines, insurance. Yay.
Bye.
Bye.
Peace.